like support related issues, then what you'll want to do is just email us at hello@dubsado.com or just send us a chat and we can answer any tech related issues you have or anything like that. We're going to try to keep those out of the webinar just for the sake of time and whatnot. Yeah, and chat support as well. The second thing, if you have any detailed questions, so as I'm going through things and you're thinking, oh, this has to do with my account, there's some specific things that I want to go through. For that case, you can just go ahead and book a call with our account solutions team, which is myself, and I have some colleagues as well. And we can sit down and go through your process, go through strategy that you can do in Dubsado, anything specific that's going on in your account. You can just go to dubsado.com/getting started. And that way you can go ahead and book a call and we can sit down. It's a 30-minute session. We can go through your process. So anything that's very specific to your account, go ahead and book a call with us and we can kind of keep more of the general questions here for this webinar. Third thing, how we're going to run this is I'm just going to go through the entire webinar front to back. I'm not going to really pause anywhere in here, but I do have Becca and Biz. They're going to kind of be monitoring the questions here. So if you guys do have questions throughout the webinar, go ahead and you can type some of those in. I just won't be looking through the comments during the webinar. So I'm not ignoring you, no worries. But they're going to try and answer those questions as we go through things too as well. And then at the end, I'll open it up for some questions that I'll go through and I'll answer some things too. So if you do have specific questions that you want me to answer, go ahead and save those until the end, and then I'll go through and read some of those, and I'll open up some questions and answers at the end. Just for sake of time, I kind of want to do one long webinar and get it all done, and then we can go through some questions at the end. And the last thing really quick before we get started, the way that I'm going to educate you on how to go through the system is not the only way to do it. You can definitely do it however you would like to, but this is just the way that going through and talking with different people in different industries, we found this is the most efficient way to get set up. And it's a way that it's not related to industry. It's not just for photographers, how we're going to talk about this today. Any area of business, this is kind of just a great general way on getting set up. So that's kind of just a quick disclaimer. This isn't the only way, but through the people that we've talked to, we found this is the most efficient way of doing things, and it makes it a little bit easier for you guys to get set up. So awesome. Let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to pull up my window so you should be able to see this here. Let's open this up. All right, perfect. So how we're going to do this, I've created an outline. For those of you guys who have done FAQ&As before, I love to create outlines. So if you do want to take notes for this, definitely grab a sheet of paper, get a computer out and type some notes in. So we're going to kind of walk through this outline that I've created just so you guys have an idea of the different steps that we recommend to take this in. So we're going to be talking about this more from a macro level, so we won't be diving into the specifics on all the different ways to build contracts and all of that. We have tons of help articles to help you as far as creating the different pieces of content or how you can use the scheduler in different ways. We won't be covering all of that, but just the basics on this is the best way to get things set up. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here, as you can kind of see in this outline, is we want to take care of the basics first. We want to make sure that your account is set up and the proper settings are set up first. So for example, if you are, signing up for Facebook or for Instagram, they have you do some account profile things when you first set up. So that's kind of what this number one is for taking care of the basics. So when I say take care of the basics, I refer to the settings menu in our system. So there's three things that I recommend. Now, there's a lot of other settings that you can set up, but the three that I recommend to look at first, because they're very important with the system, is receive money, which is going to be where you set up your payment processor, your email settings, which is going to take care of your outgoing email. So when you're sending clients emails, you want to make sure that it's coming from your email and not mail@dubsado.com, which will probably go into spam. And then also getting your calendar set up if you have an external calendar that you want to bring in. So let me cover number one here really quickly, taking care of basics. So the first thing right up here in the top right where the gear is at, that's going to be where you can go into your settings menu. And once you're in settings, the two in here that I recommend you definitely look at is going to be one, the receive money tab, where you can set up either Stripe, Square, or PayPal. Those are the 3 processors that we have. So definitely go through and get your payment processor set up so that you can invoice people through Dubsado. So that's number 1. Number 2, the email section. The email section is going to be where your outgoing and your incoming email all comes from. Right now, you can only do 1 email per brand. We are working on that. That's going to be coming soon, where you'll be able to have multiples. But right now, you will want to set up an email that you want everything sending from whenever you're sending clients contracts, questionnaires, all that good stuff. If you don't have your email set up in here, then it's going to be coming from a mail@Dubsado or no reply@Dubsado. I'm not sure which one it is, but you want to make sure that you have it set up so you're not having your emails go to spam. That's sometimes something that people overlook, is to set up an email. So make sure you take care of that so you don't have anything going to spam with your clients. So receive money and emails, 2 very important ones. Feel free to go through the other ones and kind of look and see what you need, but those 2 I definitely recommend. And the other one is your calendar, which we're going to go to the calendar here on the left-hand side in the menu. And with the calendar, up here in the top right where it says calendar settings, if we click on that, you do have the ability to link in an external calendar. So if you do have any external calendar that you want to put into the system, you can link that up here, and that's going to help you. Actually, let me click revoke calendars here so you can see what it looks like. But if we click the calendar settings and click sync calendar, it's going to give you the ability to go into Chronify, and then you can link in an external calendar. So definitely take care of that too as well. That's going to help you out bringing in outside things into Dubsado, or having Dubsado events go out to your external calendar. So those are the 3 things I recommend definitely first to do in the system. You don't have to set those up first, like I was saying, but definitely it's a big thing that you'll want to do before you start sending things out to clients. So that's number 1, taking care of the basics. You can go through the other brand settings, but those 3 are the ones I definitely recommend. Number 2, learning the lingo. So in Dubsado, some people are coming over from other CRMs. They've gotten used to the lingo from how other CRMs refer to different pieces in their system. Or maybe you're brand new to Dubsado and you're not really sure, what everything means. So number 2, a big thing that I like people to do is to learn the lingo of Dubsado and what certain things are called and what the purpose of those things are called. So the ones that we're going to talk about first, because it will provide some great context for what we go through today, is we're going to talk about projects and clients, leads and jobs. We're going to talk about those 4 things and how it all works in Dubsado so that you can become familiar with how the Dubsado lingo works. So let's go to the projects area here. So right up here underneath dashboard is the project section. Now, the project section from a macro perspective and kind of just from a macro viewpoint is this is going to be where you manage everybody in Dubsado. Anybody who's coming in as a new lead, people who you're working with, everything is going to be managed from this aspect in the projects area. And how it works, we'll talk about clients and projects first, is that in Dubsado, the term client is reference to the person that you're going to be in communication with the most during your engagement with that person. So client just means the primary person of contact. Whoever it is that you're going to be working with on this particular project or this session or this, however you want to explain it, that's going to be who the client is. And in Dubsado, a client is going to be set up with a project, which is this bar that runs across the middle here. And a project, a great way to think about it is this is functioning like the client's folder. So things that you are sending them, forms, emails, keeping track of invoices, tasks that you have for them, workflows that are running for the client, all of your communication that you do with the client is going to run through the project. So you can think about that as a client has a project and it's like the folder where everything is housed. So when I go into this particular project and I have one set up where I am the client on this project, if I click into this project, this is going to be where everything is running. So we'll click into this here and we'll just wait for this to load up here. Let me click into this. And with the projects here, while I have this project loading up, the projects can be defined as either a lead or they can be defined as a job. And what that means is that in Dubsado, whenever you have someone coming into the system, you have someone who can be a lead or you have someone who can be a job. And okay, so we have this here, we have the projects pulled up. So let's talk about this. So once we're inside of a project, this is going to be where you manage everybody, like I said. So sending emails, invoices, forms, you have everything across the top up here that's going to be where you do your managing. So if you're sending an email out to the client, it'll be in this area. If you want to send an invoice out to the client, you'll be able to go to the invoice tab and create invoices for the client. Sending different forms out to the client, you'll be able to send forms through this area. Any appointments that you want to track, or if you're using the Dubsado scheduler and putting in appointments, you'll be able to track those here. If you have workflows that are running with a client, you'll be able to go to the workflows tab and see any workflows you have running. And we will talk about workflows a little bit later, but it's just best to understand that the project is going to be where everything is functioning. Tasks and notes, if you have any notes that you want to keep on the client, you can keep it there. So from a macro level, like what we were saying, the project is going to be where everything is housed. Anything that you're doing with the client will be in that project area, and you should be sending all of your emails, your forms, contracts, keeping track of everything within that project. Now, there are certain times where you may be doing something else for the client at another time. In that case, you can create another project or another folder to keep that information in. So there could be another situation, maybe you're a designer or a photographer or things like that, where you do another session for them or another project for that person. Then you could essentially create a brand new project with new forms, new emails, new appointments and workflows running. So that's how you can kind of think about projects as a whole. And like what I was saying earlier, with these projects, they can be classified or defined as either a lead or a job. And as you can see across the top up here, the projects area has two sections to it, the leads area and the jobs area. Now, in Dubsado, leads are going to be the people who have not confirmed with you. They haven't booked with you yet. They might have not signed a contract or paid an invoice. Anyone who's just inquiring about your services, they can get put into the leads area. And the job section over here, those are going to be the people that you're working with. They have signed a contract or they've paid. Whatever you would deem the reason that would make them a job, whatever that crossover is that, okay, now I consider them a booked job, you can keep them in the job section so you can kind of split those two types of people and those two types of projects. Now, with those statuses, and that's what we call them, are the status. What's the status of this project? Is it a lead? Are they more in that lead phase, or are they more in the job phase where they're actually booked? And that's considered the status. So in the system here, each project, you can define what status this project is in. Is it more in the job phase? Is it more in the lead phase? You can adjust what phase they're in. Now, if you're brand new to Dubsado, you'll see that I have a lot of different statuses across the top up here, and you're able to customize those too to add more definition on what particular status they're in. And we're going to cover that a little bit later on project statuses and how those can work for your business. But just from a macro level, understanding that you have leads and you have jobs that you can classify, your projects and clients and where they're at. So now that we've covered that, we kind of covered the projects area. So you kind of have a good understanding of what a client is. It's tied to a project. You do your communication in that project, and those can be either considered leads or you can transition them into a job if you would like to. So if we go into the forms area here, and we'll go back to our outline, that was going to be number 2, learn the lingo. So understanding the different definitions of how things function within Dubsado. Those are some big points there that it's great to learn from the beginning. So the third thing, and this is a huge, huge point, anytime that I do a call with someone or I do, any setups with somebody or anything like that, the first thing that we always drive home is to develop your blueprint. And this is huge. It's a big step that a lot of people miss. And this is going to help you tremendously whenever you first get into Dubsado. So to me, if you learn anything from today, number 3 is probably the most vital piece of it. And that is to develop your blueprint. So I like to use kind of an architect type analogy with this, but if you're going to build a building, let's say that you're going to build the Empire State Building, you want to have a blueprint of what that's going to look like before you go through and start building and setting everything up. You want to have something out in front of you that can show you what it is that you're going to be setting up in the system or what you're going to be building. So number 3 is huge, is to develop your blueprint. And so the first thing when it comes to developing your blueprint is understanding where to start to develop your blueprint. So the first thing we're going to talk about is building your lead capture form and the different possibilities that you have for building your lead capture. So the next thing that I recommend doing is to go into the form section here, and we'll go into the forms. And the forms are going to be the different types of templates or form templates that you can send out. And we're going to cover some of these a little bit later. But the first one that I want to bring your attention to is the lead capture form over here on the right-hand side. So let's click into the lead capture. And the lead capture has so many different capabilities and possibilities that you can use with it. I'm going to cover some of those here. So what the lead capture form is in Dubsado is the lead capture is the form that you can create, that you can put onto your website to capture new leads to come into your system, to capture new inquiries. So with this form, the purpose of it is to ask the questions that you would use to just gather contact information from them, that first basic information. And with the lead capture, there's a couple different ways that you can utilize this form. I talked to some people who might not have a website, and so they think, well, I can't use the lead capture because I don't even have a website that I can set this up on. But with the lead capture, there's a lot of different ways that you can use it. The first one, if we click up here in the top right where there's the share button, this is going to give you the different ways that you can share this. The first one is going to be where you can grab this iframe code and you can embed it on your website. So if you do have a website and you want this form embedded there so they can go through, fill it out, you can grab that frame code and then it will go onto your website. The second thing is the direct link. And this has become much, much more popular with social media and how technology works nowadays. With the direct link, you can grab this link here and send it to anybody, and it's going to open up on their phone, on their tablet, in their browser. It will just open up and they can fill out the form. So if you want to send this link to somebody through text message, if you want to have this link housed on Instagram in your biography where they can just click on it and it takes them directly to the form, house it on Facebook. You have so many different ways that you can just send this link to somebody and it opens up and they can fill it out. So even if you don't have a website, don't shy away from the lead capture. You can still take advantage of this form. The other thing that you can do, which is becoming more popular as well, is actually bookmarking this link on your computer. So what you could do potentially is copy this link and bookmark it. And if you open this up in your browser, you'll be able to fill this out as the client would. So let's say that you receive phone calls or you get an email from somebody that they give you all their information up front and you don't want to resend them the form back. You can go through and fill this out internally and it's still going to give you the same effect where they fill this out and they get created in Dubsado. So really there's not any situation that someone might have that they can't take advantage of using this form. So definitely look at this form and see how you can utilize this, because there are some other things that we'll talk about here in a second that are really going to help when it comes to developing your blueprint. So with this form, from a macro level, what this does is once they fill this form out, they get created in the lead section as a new lead. They get set up with a project. So when you're just bringing someone into the system, this lead capture form is what they're going to fill out or what you can fill out that will automatically set them up with a new project. So that's kind of the overall function of this form. But the other reason that you want to use this form when it comes to developing your blueprint is you can start workflows from this form. Now, What's a workflow? A workflow is going to be the set of actions that you run through with your clients. It's the repeated tasks that you do for each client, the emails that you send out. Maybe once someone fills out a lead capture form here, you send them a thank you email, and then you have a questionnaire go out. Then maybe you send a quote to them and they sign the contract, they pay. Whatever your process is that you have with a client, that's what's going to be the workflow, and we're going to develop that inside of Dubsado. But in order to know what your workflow is going to be, your blueprint, it's best to start with this form, and I'll show you why. So on this form, there's two things that you can do to begin your process with a client, to move them from going through a lead, giving them the right information, having them convert into a job, and then eventually, you get paid and all of that whole process. With this form, if we click into the settings menu up here at the top, the first thing that you can do is apply a default workflow to begin in the system. What that means is that if you have the exact same process for every single person who fills out the form, it doesn't matter what they're interested in or what service they're interested in, it's the exact same process for every single person. You can apply a default workflow to begin from this form. And so you would write out your actions, which we'll talk about later. You'll write out your actions, apply it to this lead capture. So what happens is they fill out this form. When the project gets created, the workflow then begins in that project and starts sending out those necessary pieces to them. The other thing that you can do as well is make workflows trigger based off of a certain answer that they choose. In that case, what we have is called a workflow element tool, which is right here on the left-hand side. And for those of you who aren't familiar with building forms in Dubsado, you'll build your forms using these elements on the right-hand side. So text boxes, images, yes, no questions, short answer boxes. All of the different pieces to create this form, you'll just use these elements on the side, and it's just click and drag, and you can drag that onto the form. With this form here, the thing that I have already on here, which is the workflow element, it asks what type of event are you having or what service are you interested in. By clicking into that, they can select from different services or different options that you have from them, and you could potentially assign a different workflow to begin. So in this case, and kind of the with this webinar, it will be the way that we'll talk through this is, let's say that I'm a photographer and I offer different types of photography. So I do portraits, I do family sessions, I do sporting events or engagement sessions. I want them to be able to go down the different paths based off of what they select. So if they select portraits, I want these set of actions to happen. If they choose family, I need these to happen. So if you have more of a service-based business and you want them to get started on the right path, then you'll want to go through and set it up this way, and you can apply a different set of actions to happen based off of what they choose. If you're a designer, maybe you do logo design, graphic design, web design, you have different types of design that you do. In order to set them on the right path, you'll want to use this workflow element tool to assign potentially the right workflow to start once they pick that answer. So how does this help with developing your blueprint? If you can go through, and this is the first thing in developing your blueprint, is understanding what you're going to do from the lead capture. Since this is the first point of contact that you're probably going to have with a client, you want to get this set up first so you know what your workflows are going to end up being. It really kind of works not in your favor if you go to workflows first and start building without realizing what your capabilities can be with the lead capture. So that's why before you go through and start building workflows and getting all of that set up, develop your blueprint and know what it's going to be, what your different workflows are going to be when they take off. This will give you a great starting point. So if I'm looking at this, I'll say, okay, so they're going to come to the lead capture, they'll click on portraits. What are the actions that are going to happen after that? Or if they go to my lead capture and they click engagement, Now, what's the process that happens? This is what your blueprint is going to be in Dubsado. You might not have 4 different options. You might have 2 options. I've seen people do this where it's based off of budget, where if they're in the 0 to 1,000 range, I want these actions to happen. If they're from $5,000 to $10,000, I want this to happen. So you can decide what you want to be as your kind of macro level getting them started. Now, once they get these workflows started, now you can start sending them more detailed things, maybe a proposal that's more concentrated or a questionnaire that digs in and gets a little more information. But just to start, this form is going to help you out tremendously, or this element on the form is going to help you out a lot. So that's number 1 underneath developing the blueprint. We'll go back to our outline, is to build your lead capture and understand what your possibilities are with the lead capture. Get comfortable with that and know, okay, if they're coming to my lead capture, these are my options. What starts from there? Number 3 is to write out your process. And I'm also going to talk about C, which is to highlight your content as well. So this step is also huge because this is going to help you understand number 4, which is gathering your materials. And we'll talk about that in a second. But write out your process and highlight your content. So let me show you what that potentially looks like, because a lot of people will have their lead capture set up, but they don't know how to write out their process properly. So let me show you a great example of how you can take advantage of this. So to write out your process, let's go to a different form here. And I've actually kind of written out, I've written out just kind of a generic process here. So in this, I just made a portraits workflow, because remember from our lead capture, we had in there, you could do portraits, sporting events, engagement, those different types of things. So what I want to do is, if they click portraits, what are the actions that are going to happen at this point? So what I did was I went through and I just wrote out the steps of what happens in my process. It's important to understand that it's your process too as well. That means that you might have different forms than someone else. You might have different tasks that you need to do. Your workflow should be based around your lifestyle, the way that you want to run your business. Every workflow is super, super unique. There's to-dos that might be different from somebody else's. Maybe they need to put approve buttons on every single email before they send out. They want their hand on everything before an email goes out. Some people want their process to be 100% automated. So one thing that will help you out to understand is there's not a one way to build a workflow, or this is just a general workflow that this is how it's supposed to go. Your workflow should be based off of your business. So take comfort in knowing that your workflow might be completely different than every other photographer or every other cake designer that's out there, but that's okay because it's your workflow. It should function based off of how you want it to run. So definitely know that, and that will help you kind of relieve some pressure of thinking, okay, I have to get my workflow so that it looks like every other person in my business. It definitely does not have to. So with this here, what I did was, we'll kind of walk through this just so you can see, if I'm in a business, this is kind of how I would write out my flow. A lead capture gets filled out and they choose portraits. Then I want a thank you email to go out to the client with a scheduler link. Then maybe a thank you email gets sent a day after the appointment's over. Then I want to send out a proposal, a contract, and an invoice. I want that to go out a week later. After they pay a deposit, I want a welcome packet to get sent out. Then I want to activate a client portal, which we have in the system as well. And we'll hopefully be able to get into that. I want to make sure I get the basics covered first. But I want to activate a client portal and send out a portal email to the client. I have a pre-session checklist that I want to go out 2 weeks before their session. So as you can see, all I'm doing is I'm just listing out the different steps that I have. I'm not worried about building workflows yet. I'm just listing out, writing it out. I just did it on a Dubsado form. You can use sticky notes, a scratch piece of paper, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, however you want to write out your process. This is your blueprint. So when we're talking about number 3, this is such a vital piece, because now I can see here, if I'm looking at this process, what number 4 is on our outline, which is to gather your materials. If you remember, the one thing that I put in there was to write out your process and also highlight your content. So now what I did was I went through here and all the content that's involved in here, I made red. I put it as red text. So I need a lead capture form. I need a thank you email. I need to build a scheduler. As I'm going through this list, I have another thank you email that I want to send out. I have a proposal, a contract, a welcome packet. I have a email that I need to do to send them portal information, a pre-session checklist, and also a get ready email. So what I did was I identified what content I'm going to need in Dubsado now. I don't have to second guess on, well, do I need this or do I need this? I already have it written out. One thing, if you are an architect, is that you don't want to have materials laying around that aren't even going into the project. You want to know ahead of time, this is how many screws I'm going to need. This is how many beams I'm going to need, or these are the pieces of drywall that I'm going to need. You want to have all of that laid out here so that you can properly see, okay, these are the different things that I need to create in Dubsado. And that's going to be the next point we talk about. But this step often gets very overlooked when I talk to different people in different industries. And I always tell them, go back and write it out. Even if you know it in the back of your head, it helps to write it out, because then you can see if there's anything that you might have missed. And that's what the benefit of writing out your process does for you. So let's go back to our outline here. If you're following along, we're on number 3 here, which is to build your lead capture so you know your possibilities, write out the different processes from that lead capture, and then just go through and highlight the content. You might have it set up as well where in my 4 workflows, I might have the same email that I can send potentially in all of those. That's totally fine. You can use different pieces that you're creating in all of your workflows, but it's important to know that that's going to be the same email. So highlight your content. Number 4, gather your materials. Build your process-based content. This is huge. A lot of times people will go into the system, they'll start setting things up without even knowing if they need it or not. And they'll just start building, they'll put in these emails and these forms, and oh, it looks like you guys have sub-agreements. Let me just start creating those. You might not even need those. So that's why it's important to build your process-based content based off of the process that you've written out. Go through first and just create that content. That's going to help you so you're not flustered on, I don't know what emails I need or what forms I might need. You already have it written out. You have your recipe set up so you know what ingredients you need up front. So build your process-based content. Now we're going to talk about some of this content. So number 1, let's talk about packages. So in the template section, which if you're newer to Dubsado, the template section over here is going to be where you basically build anything that has to do with content. Anything that you're going to be sending out to the client, content, it's all going to be here on the left-hand side. So the first thing we're going to talk about is packages. What are packages? Packages are going to be anything that you offer, whether it's service-based, whether they're actual products that you sell that have a price point attached to it. Anything that you have that you know there's a price point attached to it, you're going to build it as a package. Packages can be a lot of different things. They can be singular items. As you can see, I have add-ons that are built in here. If you have a la carte items, if you have a package that has, 7, 8, 9 different line items that they get in there, anything that has a price point attached to it can be built as a package. So don't think that just because you don't have like a package-based business that you can't take advantage of these. I've set up some different services for people where they have all sorts of different things, add-ons, singular items, different things like that. So as you can see here, I have, if they want to purchase a second photographer, I have that as an add-on. It's just one line item, but it's considered a package in our system. So that's a great way to identify what a package is think about your business and anything that has a price point attached to it, build it as a package. And you can edit packages on the fly. So if your prices do adjust a little bit or you change the quantities out, still go through and build it as a package, and you can edit it later and it won't affect your master templates at all unless you wanted to. But you can develop your different things that have price points attached to them in the packages area. So that's number 1. Number 2 on the list is contracts. So let's talk about contracts here. In Dubsado, you can create contracts that can be signed electronically. So if you have like HelloSign, DocuSign, those types of different things, you can create contracts, and we'll click into one here. that can have your terms and agreements in there. And at the very bottom, you can add in signature area elements or initials that you want them to initial on. So contracts can be built in here. The other thing that we have as well is sub-agreements, which in our system are considered like secondary contracts. Anything that extends outside of like your general terms and conditions is considered a sub-agreement. So like photo releases, proofing is a great way that you can use sub-agreements. If you need them to sign off on anything, contract addendums, if you need to make changes to your contract, you could create like a secondary sub-agreement or secondary contract. You could also do like any waivers or things like that. Those are going to be sub-agreements. They both have signature elements on them, and you can do initials on both of those, but that's how you can kind of classify the difference between the two of those. Questionnaires. These are probably one of our more open-ended forms. The questionnaires can really be used for just about anything. You can use it to ask questions. You can use it just as a way that you can display images if you want to. The questionnaires have really no specific purpose. You can use them for a lot of different things. With the questionnaires, another cool thing that you can do as well is with this up arrow, and you can see that right there, if you click on that up arrow, you can drop a PDF into Dubsado and use it as a Dubsado template. The one outlier with this is the PDFs that get dropped in here, they need to be read-only PDFs, or if they're just more informative. So you can't fill out any PDFs that you drop in here. If something needs to be filled out by the client, then it would need to be created as a Dubsado form. And I'm sure Becca will put this in the chat, but if you do want us to recreate Dubsado forms for you, we do offer a free service where you can send us up to 10 forms and we'll recreate those as Dubsado forms. So even if you have a PDF that you say, well, I don't really want to go through and have to build that, I'm not really sure how I would build it, go ahead and send that to us and we can go through and make it a Dubsado template so that it can be filled out. So if you do have like a read only, maybe you're just showing your pricing to someone, they don't need to fill out anything, like a pricing guide, you can just drop that in there and it will work in your list of forms and you can send that out via workflow, all that good stuff. Proposals. Proposals I'm going to spend a little bit more time on because a lot of people might think they might not need proposals or how they work, but let's talk about those for a second. So what are proposals? The proposals are going to be the thing that you can send out to the client to show what your pricing is, and they can make selections on it and create an invoice based off of their choices. It's like an order form in our system, or other systems call it a quote. That's what the proposal is in our system. So if we click on one of these here, what you can do, and this is another reason why I have you do packages first, is because with the proposal, you can take those packages and put them on the proposal for a client to choose from. So if you remember my packages, I had like a level 1, a level 2, a level 3. Here are my add-ons that I had them that they can choose from. So it's important to understand that the packages are kind of like your menu items and the proposal is your actual menu. So you can take those items, put them on the proposal, and they can make choices on what they're interested in. With the proposal, one thing that's exclusive to the proposal is the package element where you can drag those packages onto the form. So a great way to think about it is packages and proposals go together. That's how you can kind of think about it. So that's one way that you can use proposals in the system, is by dragging your packages on there. When a client goes through and fills this out and they click submit, it creates an invoice automatically in the system. So that's how you can kind of think about this form, is that it's going to generate an invoice. The other thing that you can do with proposals, which is great in our system when it comes to pitching your pricing, having a client sign a contract and pay, kind of that tough point that people might have a tough time getting them to know what they want, sign the contract and pay. In our system, in the settings menu up here, you have the ability, the two that we're going to talk about is you have the ability to add a contract and the invoice that they created and have that show to the client as well. So that's one reason why I encourage you to do your contracts first, is because you can pull in your contracts onto this form once you're done with those contracts. So what you can do essentially is have them select what they want, then have them get taken to the contract and attach a contract to it. And then you can also have the invoice that they created from the form also show to them. It's kind of like the shopping cart. I'm a huge Amazon fan, so when you get to the shopping cart and pay for what you selected, that's kind of what that show invoice button is for, is that what they picked on the proposal will then be shown to them at the end. They can make their selections on what they're interested, or they can pay for what they chose on the proposal. So the proposal can streamline an enormous amount of your process, from pitching what you offer to having them sign and pay. All that can be streamlined in just one thing, sending out the proposal. So that's one reason why I like to kind of cover the possibilities of proposals, is because you can streamline a lot of your process using the proposal system. The other thing that I want to do, because we do have a lot of industries that are more custom-based work, so you don't really have set packages, I didn't want to leave you guys hanging for this webinar. So what I did was I made what's called a quote-like proposal in our system. And so let me click into that so I can give you guys some love too as well on how you can use proposals. So what we can do with the proposals, if you do 100% custom-based work, you never do anything that's the same, you can still use the proposal, contract, invoice method. What you'll do is, in the system, and we have a ton of help articles on this, so I won't go into super specific details just for sake of time, but what you can do here is you can add what are called invoice smart fields into our system. And what these brackets are going to do is it's going to look at the invoice that you create. So if you do custom work, what you'll do in our system is you'll build the invoice first based off of a consultation that you have with the client, based off of, maybe just talking with them. This is what I'm interested in. You can build an invoice first in our system and then have it display on this proposal for them to say, yes, this looks great, I want to continue and move forward. So with that, if you do custom work, you can basically have one proposal that will take the specifics of each invoice that you create, just paste it on that proposal, and then the client can accept it, they can sign and pay. So even if you don't have packages, don't shy away from using the proposals. You can still use that if you do all custom work and maybe you don't have any packages, you can still use the proposal. So that's going to be a huge thing in the system, are the proposals as well. Let's jump into the outline so we can take a look at a couple more things here. Canned emails. So we talked about packages, contracts, questionnaires, proposals. Let's talk about canned emails. From working with a lot of different people, canned emails is something that really gets overlooked when it comes to setting up a proper workflow. And so with canned emails, if we go to the templates area and we'll go into canned emails, the canned email section is going to be the place where you can create email templates that you constantly find yourself sending out to clients, retyping the exact same email and sending it out to a client. This area is going to be where you can put in payment reminder emails, welcome emails, appointment reminder emails. If you have like review or survey emails that you send out to someone at the end to get like a Google review or something on Yelp. Any email that you find yourself constantly sending out to clients, you can create that as a template here so that you can make your emailing a lot quicker. If you have an email that's like, hey, we're not a good fit, and you always type that exact same email, you can create that here. Or as you can see, I have follow-up emails that you follow up with clients with. So a good rule of thumb, sometimes I tell this to people and it kind of resonates with what types of emails you can create here. Any email that you sent to more than 3 clients, just make it a canned email. That will help you get an understanding on thinking about your business and saying, what emails do I constantly send out to clients? Save yourself a lot of work, and you can just build those as canned emails and then just send those out either through the workflow. You can send it out manually if you want to, but you'll have your list there that you can choose from versus retyping the same email all the time. We want to take out all that manual work. Another great rule of thumb too, it's kind of just a pro tip for you guys. In our system, when you are sending out forms, either through the workflow, if you're sending contracts to somebody, how it works in our system is that you'll choose the form that you want to send first, and then you'll choose the email that goes with that form. So a good rule of thumb that I like to tell people is the forms that you have in the form section, if you're planning on sending those to the client via email, write a canned email to go with that form. That way, when you're building your workflow, which we'll take a look at here in a little bit when we get to workflows, is you can you can set it up where you have your form going out, and then you can choose the email that's going to go out with that form. So if you have a proposal and a proposal email, those two can link up really quickly, and it'll save you a lot of time when you get to workflows. So make sure you write that down if you're taking notes, that if you have a form that you're planning on sending, just write a little email for it. And so that way you know that you have that email to deliver that form to the client. So canned emails is huge. The next thing that I believe I have on my list is the scheduler template. So this is kind of a newer feature that we have in our system where you can show your availability to a client. So it works similar to like Calendly or Acuity, where you can show your availability to the client and have them book you out. So if we go to templates and we go to scheduler, again, we're talking about content now. So everything that you're going to be sending out to the client, we want to go through and build all of that. So if I click on the scheduler, what you're going to do is, and how our scheduler templates work, I won't go too far into the scheduler because we have a lot of help articles on that, but just from a macro level, the scheduler templates, what those are designed for is to build all of the different templates that you have based off of how many different appointment types you have. So for example, if we're looking at these here, I might do an initial consultation. I also have an engagement session that I might want to send out. Portrait session, if it's, maybe different parameters on when I'm available, how long the appointment is. So that's how you can think about what templates you need to build as a scheduler, is what are the different appointment types you offer? Do you do like little coffee chats that are 20 minutes? Build that as a scheduler. And then maybe you do longer sessions. You would build that as a separate scheduler. And what you can do is you can have different availability for different appointment types. Maybe you only do coffee chats on Thursdays and Fridays, but then also on your sessions, you do those at any day of the week. You can set up your different parameters and different guidelines for different scheduler templates. Now, with these scheduler templates, two things. One, it's going to read off of your main calendar. So if you're booked out at 9 a.m. on a Monday, it can block out the ability to be booked out from any other type of session that you have. So even though you have different templates, it's all reading off of the same calendar. So that's one point to consider. The second thing is, if you set up your external calendar in the settings there in the calendar, if you set it up there, Dubsado scheduler can also read the external events that you have going too, so it'll block it off in this program. So if you're saying, I don't want to use the scheduler because it can't read if I have a dentist appointment, or I'm working with or I'm going on vacation with my family or something like that, our scheduler can read those external things. You'll have to import your calendar in so it can read it. But if you do have that imported, you can have it block off as well. So that's how our scheduler works in the system, is it's based off of appointment type. And you can build as many different types of templates as you want to, but it all reads off of that same calendar. So that's the scheduler templates. And the last thing that we're going to talk about when it comes to content before we transition over to workflow is we're going to talk about your payment schedules. So payment schedules, what are payment schedules? These are going to be different templates that you create that you want to be able to show your client how much they need to pay and when they need to pay. So on invoices, what you can do is you can add different payment schedule templates to an invoice to show the client, hey, this date, you need to pay this much. On this date, you need to pay this much. So what I've done is I've made some different templates and some different ideas for templates so you can understand what your possibilities are. So for example, this one, a 50-50 payment, what that would mean is 50% is due up front, 50% is due later. So you can create those parameters in here based off of the different scheduled payments you need them to make. I have another one that is, it's a 25%. So 25% is due the day they sign the contract. A month later, another 25% is due. After that, another 25% is due. So you can set up your parameters based off of when you need them to pay. And then the last one is, let's say that you need $300 down due up front and then the rest at a later time. You can set up situations like that. You can decide if you want a fixed dollar amount that's due or a percentage of the invoice that's due. You can also send out reminders through the payment schedule. So if you're in a position where you say, oh, well, I want my client to get notified that they have a payment coming up, That's what payment schedules are for. So in one of my payment schedules here, you can also set up reminders that'll say, 2 days before this payment is due, I need them to get this email, or 2 days after the payment, if they haven't made their payment, I need them to get an email. That's all in payment schedules. So if you do have that type of system set up for your business, go through and build out the different ways that you can do payment schedules. Maybe you have different templates to choose from. You can build those in here as well. So now that we've covered the content portion, I kind of took you through all the different templates that we have. We talked about packages, contracts, questionnaires, proposals, emails, scheduler, and then payment schedules. So the next thing that we're going to do, this is a huge step that also gets overlooked as well. Underneath number 3, this is also something that's going to be a huge win for you guys who are watching. Get familiar with Dubsado. I've talked to a lot of different people, a lot of different industries that have had people set up their entire system for them. And when they get the system delivered to them, they have no idea how to run it or how it's going to work, how Dubsado works. So even if you have a fully functioning system and you don't know how Dubsado works just on a basic level, it's going to be really hard for you to understand what's going on. So number 5, what I usually recommend to people to do once they've built their different templates and pieces of content is to get familiar and understand how the workflow is actually going to work. And how can you do that? What's a great way to practice on doing that? What you can do is you can go to the projects area and you can create yourself as a test client. So when you go to the projects, like I have myself here inside of this project, I have it set up for my email. So I know no matter what I send through here, it's coming to me as considering that I'm the client. So make a project or make a folder that has you as the client, and then you can just go through and start testing things, sending things out. Now, if you want to know what the workflow is going to be doing behind the scenes, let's say you have this super powerful workflow, but you don't really know what's actually happening with it. A great way to build confidence in what's going to be happening is to go through your process and do everything manually first. If you do this, you're going to understand exactly what the workflow is actually doing because you're running through it. So you're developing your confidence on, I know what my workflow process is doing because I've gone through the whole thing and I know how the emails look when they come through. I know that if I'm sending a form, it's actually going to the forms and applying the form and sending it. So one piece, if you're really struggling with understanding how a workflow works, is to go through your process. So let's go back to my process now. And in here, remember, I have my process listed. I have all my content built now. So now what I would do if I want to get comfortable with my workflow, and I haven't built it yet, but what the workflow is going to be doing is I would go through and do this manually. I would send myself a thank you email with the scheduler in there. I would send myself the thank you email pretending the appointment's done. Or I would go through and send out my proposal contract invoice to myself and send myself the welcome packet, activate the client portal. If there's to-dos that you need to add into your workflow, which we'll talk about to-dos when we get to workflows, but go through your process and actually do all of these steps manually. Not that we want you to always be doing this manually, but if you go through and know what the workflow is actually doing, that just raises your confidence level because then you'll be confident in knowing, okay, I know what my workflow is actually doing. So if I need to jump in at any point and stop the workflow and maybe send something out on the fly, because as we know, business can get crazy. Sometimes there's, something random that'll happen and you might need to do something on the fly. So if you know how to use the program, this will get you familiar with how Dubsado works. So that's a huge step that we've started to encourage people to do that will greatly, greatly increase your confidence. So you're not intimidated by workflows or you kind of shy away from them because you're not sure how it's going to work. Create yourself as a test project, go through and just start sending yourself things, and you don't have to worry about maybe misfiring and sending something out to a client when you weren't ready. So that's a huge step that I recommend is number 5, get familiar with how your workflow is actually going to work. Number 6, now we're going to finally get into workflows. So for those of you who are brand new to Dubsado and you want to go straight to workflows, because we see that a lot where you'll sign up and immediately go to workflows to set up automation. If you don't have these outliers done beforehand, it's going to make it where it's not as efficient to build your workflow. Again, like I said in the very beginning, you can go through and you can actually go to workflows first if you want to. But a lot of times the people that I've worked with, when they go straight to workflows, they get immediately overwhelmed and it makes it harder for them to get their workflows together. If you follow this process about getting your process laid out, knowing what you want to do, building your content, and then setting up the workflow, the people that I've talked to that have gone that route, they find it way more easier. And I'm sure that you probably know some people or have seen it in the community where people have actually developed, different things that they've done first and built the content and then went to workflows. And it becomes so much easier because you have your steps listed out and you have your content prepared. So number 6, let's talk about building the foundation. So again, we're kind of in that architecture type analogy. So we're going to build the foundation first, which is going to be the beginning of your workflow. So what we're going to do, what I did was I went into the workflow section now and I laid out, we're going to look at this one first. This is the workflow area where you can have your different templates. So what I did was I went through my process that I wrote out and I began to build the actions on what I wanted to have happen. I'm going to remove a couple of these first because I realized I have some things in there that I'm going to put in later. But for example here, let's just say that this is my process as far as sending out content to somebody. My thank you email, I want to send that out. Then I want to send out my appointment scheduler, my consultation. I want to send out my form, send out my questionnaire, send out my thank you email. Just laying out the basics. As you can see, I called this 1.0 because I want you guys to understand a couple things about workflows. One, as Dubsado grows and we add more features into the system and things get enhanced, we might add in more workflow triggers. Your workflow will never fully always be complete. There will be times where you might find that you need to add a couple things because you might like the way that this functions a little bit more. If we add in a new feature and you want to incorporate that into your workflow. So something that can also relieve a little bit of stress with workflows is that your workflow might be adapting later. So you don't have to build a perfect version just to start. Just lay out your basic actions first, and then we can start working in more, and you can start maybe adding in a few to-dos, and then you can maybe add in another email. As you start using it with clients, you might say, oh, I can actually get rid of that questionnaire. I don't need it anymore. Your workflows are kind of a work in progress, just like your business is. Your business should never stay the same for the entire time that you're in business. Your business is going to adapt, which means it should anyway, that your workflow will adapt with your business process. So take light in knowing that your workflow, it doesn't have to be perfect the first time. It's probably going to change. It's probably going to adapt the more that your business adapts and that Dubsado starts adding in more features. So the first thing I did, and we'll talk about building a workflow action here really quickly. So when you're building a workflow action, there's 3 pieces to building an action. So let's click add action down here. The first thing you're going to do is choose what you want to do. What's the action that we're doing here? So when you click this drop down, this gives you a list of all the different things that you can do in Dubsado. You know, send an email out, send a form, sending a contract or an invoice, creating a to-do. These are really powerful. Your workflows don't have to be 100% automated, always sending things out. You click start and you just let it run. When you build to-dos into the workflow, those are going to be internal reminders that pop up that can let you know, oh, you need to go get this done or you need this to happen. So if you do have any task management that you need to do in your workflow, you can build that into the workflow to be a hybrid of sending things out to the client and also tasks that you need to get done. Sending out an appointment scheduler, all of these different things is what you can do in the workflow. So let's just say that we want to send an email out to the client. That's the action that we pick. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to choose when we want this action to happen. So this is where you're going to decide what's going to trigger this email to send. So this is the second part about building a workflow. In this case, we have a list of different milestones or triggers that you can have the workflow watch for. And once those things have happened, it will do that action. So if you want to send something out before the start date of their project or before their session, if you want to send something out, X amount of time after the workflow has even started, after they pay their invoice or sign their contract, maybe after their appointment is booked or after an appointment has ended. So the second thing you're going to do is choose when you want this email to go out. What's going to make it trigger? So in this case, let's just say that after they pay their invoice, that's when I want it to go out. And with this over here, you can choose, maybe you want it to be like an hour after they pay their invoice, or 3 hours, or 3 weeks. So anything like that, you can choose the parameters on when you want it to happen. The last thing that you need to do in building a workflow, and this is where content becomes so powerful if you have it done beforehand, and why I will always tell people till the end of time, try building all of your content first, is because when you're setting up a workflow, our workflow action, the first thing is choosing what you want to do, then when you want it to go out, and then the third thing is what content is going out with this action. So if I click this drop down, all of my canned emails are now pulling up for me. So as you can see, if you have all of your content built beforehand, you can see how easy it is to just drop in whatever content you need. What we want to shy away from is coming here and realizing, oh, I have no emails built, so let me go build that email and then come back to the workflow and add it, go to the next action, oh, I don't have that form, go build that form, then come back. We want to kind of get out of that, because then it's going to seem really tedious to keep going back and forth. But if you have your content built beforehand, you can see where if you have the list of everything, you can just click and say, yep, this form, this email, this contract, this proposal. It will make it so much easier whenever you're going through and setting up your workflow actions. So that's a huge reason why I always say try to build your content first. So let's say that I send this, let's do it's time for your session or something like that, this email. One other thing, just from a macro level so you understand the capabilities of a workflow, is you can also require approval on anything that's going out to the client. So if you're sending an email, sending a form, you can require approval on that action before it goes out. So again, if you're more in the lane of, well, I need to make sure that I can customize something before it goes out. I need to make sure that I have my hand on everything and I'm the one that says when it goes out. Totally fine. You can put an approval button on your emails to go out. And then once it gets there, it'll send you an email saying, hey, do you want this to go out? And then you can approve it to go out or make your changes first and then send it. So that's on the workflow level, how you'll build an action. And this is what I did here is I just went through and I just listed out my actions here. These are the different steps that I want to do. I want to send an email, send a scheduler, send a form, and kind of go through those sort of things. So that's number one when it comes to building your foundation, is to go through and just build the basics. The seventh one that I like to call is it's time to decorate. So a lot of people want the automation, the streamline, have Dubsado do all the cool optimizations and organization and all that cool stuff right from the very beginning. But it's important to go through and get that foundation laid and to build your first version of your workflow. Number 7, when I call it time to decorate, what that means is now we're going to add in, once you have your first version of your workflow built, now we're going to go and we're going to add in the fancy stuff, the flat screen TV, the swimming pool, all that cool stuff. So what you can do, and now we're going to go back to the project statuses that we had. So if we go to the projects area now, the project statuses across the top up here should define where your client is at in the process of their flow. So what you really want in a perfect world is you want your project statuses to match what's happening in your workflow. Because what I'm going to show you here in a second is that your workflow can actually look at what's happening in the workflow and move it across this timeline in the proper channels of what's going on in the workflow. So you can come to this page and see, oh, 30 people have the inquiry email sent out. 20 people are awaiting booking. You'll be able to see because the workflow is going to move them through those necessary channels. So the reason why I encourage people to build out just your first version of your workflow first before doing these statuses is because what I recommend is going into the workflow, and we'll go to just the basic one that I have set up. And I'm going to look at what I'm doing in this workflow. I'm sending out a thank you email. I'm sending out my scheduler. I'm sending out the proposal. I'm sending out a questionnaire, and I'm sending out a thank you email. Let's say those are my actions. I want to build my statuses based off of what I'm doing in this workflow. So if I go back to my projects area, what I've done is inquiry email sent, awaiting booking. So once I send out my scheduler, it could be in that status. Appointment confirmed and they've paid their deposit. The proposal goes out to them. All these different steps. If it's more of when they're a job and considered a job, you can build job statuses as well. So where you can build these statuses is in the customize section here on the right-hand side. If we click into that, this right here is going to be where you can add in those statuses and whatnot. So you want to build your statuses based off of your workflow so that your workflow can run through and it can change the project statuses as you move. The other thing I want to talk about as well are tags here really quickly. Tags are going to be a way that you can define what types of clients you're working with. Anything that has to do with demographic or how you want to identify what types of clients you're working with, you can tag projects. So if you remember my lead capture, we have portraits, family, sporting events. I made like local, out of state, the ones who are in June, July, engagement, all of these different ways that I can identify what types of clients I have. You want to build those as tags, and you can add multiple tags to a project. So this one I have here, I have this one, it's an engagement session and it's happening in July. So you can tag your projects based off of what types of clients you're working with. So this is going to be where they're at in their process working with you. This is going to be how you can identify what types of clients you're working with. So let's go back to the workflow here. We're just about finished. So now I took my portraits 1.0 and I've added in project status changes based off of these different actions. So here's my original workflow. Now I can go to this portraits workflow. Now it's a little bit more beefed up because I've added in project status changes. That's one of the actions that you can do in the workflow, is to change a project status. So what I can do now is, once that email's gone out, now I can go and add a project status change to have them move to inquiry email sent. So what's happening in my workflow now is the workflow sending something or doing something, it's moving a status change. The next thing that happens, it sends out maybe my scheduler, then I have it into awaiting confirmation. So you want to look at your workflow. What milestones do I want to watch for? Or what are the actions that I'm having go through? Build those as statuses, and then just go through and add in those project statuses, sprinkle in that fancy stuff. You can add tags in the workflow. So all of those like little optimization and organization streamline things, that's where you're going to add in the fancy stuff. So hopefully that gives you a good understanding of, you're actually going to go back into your workflow and add in those last little pieces before you go through and make this live. So last couple things here. Number 8, test, 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 and take notes. I can't stress this enough. When you have your workflow built, so like the portraits one that I just built, what I recommend doing is taking that workflow, going into that test project you created, maybe create a new one that has nothing in it. Make sure you're the client on there, and go into the workflow, and we'll go to projects here, and we'll go into a project, and we'll go to the workflows tab. And from this point, you can apply a workflow to begin manually from this aspect. Go through your workflow and test it out. And while you're testing it, write notes on, I don't like the way that this email is formatted. I need to go change that. Or maybe I need to add a to-do in here because I'm forgetting to go do this. The more that you test a workflow out, it's going to help you, again, gain confidence, and also know that you might need to manipulate a few things. A lot of people will call in to have our team kind of audit their workflows to make sure they're functioning properly. We can look for errors and we can look for things that might not fire when you think they're going to. But another process when it comes to auditing a workflow is making sure that you like the way that it's going through. You like the way that the emails look or that the forms look. You might need to change up a few things. So auditing a workflow is also a little bit on you guys' end too, to go through, test it out, write some notes, see how you like it, and then make those changes in your workflow again once you've gone through and tested it. And then the last thing, this will be the last thing here, and then I'll open it up for some questions, is to go live. So if we go to my workflows here, let's jump into the workflow section. I have a portraits workflow, a family workflow, a sporting events, and an engagement workflow. I kind of duplicated these, but you can kind of get the idea that I have different workflows because of my lead capture. Once you have your workflows built, and actually let me touch on this really quick before we go back to the lead capture. With a workflow, there's different ways that you can build this. You could build one long workflow where it's your entire process top to bottom. You could do it where it's broken up into different phases. So if this is my portraits workflow, I might have just the lead portion as a workflow and then have it transition into a booked section. So you can split your workflows up in different ways. It doesn't have to be one long process. But in this case, I have my workflows built. Now I'm going to go back to my lead capture, and this is kind of bringing everything full circle. We started with lead capture. We went on the journey, and we're coming back to it at the end. So if we go back into my workflow now, I can now go here and say, okay, if they click portraits, I want my portraits workflow to start. If they choose family, let's grab the family one. Sporting events, boom, add that in there. Engagement, add that one in there. What does this do for you to kind of sum all of this up? Let's say you're on vacation with your family and you have your lead capture on your website or it's on your Instagram bio. You've sent it out to a few people. What you have now is peace of mind knowing that if someone comes to this lead capture and they choose family, every step that you have that they go through is now already built and properly set up so that you can relax and know it's okay if they go through and they choose this on my lead capture. I know that I've built the steps in a proper way. I've outlined all of it. My content's built. It's set up correctly. And now I know that my process will work inside of Dubsado. And I know that if they choose any option, I'm covered because I've done all the work and I've laid that foundation so that this will be 100% streamlined once it comes through. So that really is what Dubsado is designed to do, is to take your business process, organize it, give it structure, optimize it, streamline it, and give it life so that once you're, have this live and you have people coming to your website, you know that you're good. If let's say you have 25 leads that all go to your website at once, are you prepared for that influx of clients? If you set everything up in this way, what it's going to do is if you do have 25 people come through, you're good. So you'll know that you have everything set up in the background and everything's going to be working appropriately. So hopefully that helps you guys out with kind of the right way to go through Dubsado. Like I said, it's not the only way, but after working with a lot of people, we found that this process will make things so much more efficient for you. And it's going to make it where you don't have to fret about workflows or be not confident with what's going on in your workflow. It covers the education portion so you feel like you know what's going on with Dubsado. So let me pop over to the comments here. I know there's probably a ton of stuff here, but I'll open it up for some questions for those of you guys who have hung with us, and I'll answer a few here. I know we're a little over time, but definitely write in those questions here and I can get those answered for you. Awesome. Just kind of going through here, seeing if there's anything. Let's see, let's go back through a couple of these questions here. With QuickBooks, it looks like we got that set up there. Gotcha. Oh, that's a great question. So let's answer that really quickly, Christine, so I can talk about that too as well. So if you send a proposal, build a contract and an invoice along with it, then the customer decides to do everything at one go, will that appear as a lead or a job in the projects? So how that would work is essentially you could put in a project status that would be maybe once they pay their invoice or once they sign their contract, that's going to trigger them to move from a lead to a job. So that's kind of where that crossover comes in. It would depend on what statuses you create that you can drop them into once a certain trigger has happened. It's a great question. Awesome. Let's see here. Okay, perfect. So Matt says, is it possible to embed video into a quote and a proposal? It is possible. So what you can do with that is if we go into a proposal, let's go in there. So what we have, one of the elements that we have on the right-hand side here is we have what's called the code block element. So if you click and drag this onto a form, you can click in here and you can embed code into the form. And so you can embed YouTube videos or Vimeo videos, anything that has an embed code, you can put that there and it'll be inside of the proposal there for you, or inside of really the form, because you can also use this on questionnaires as well. And I believe you can also do this on lead captures too. So you can do a lead capture and you can have a video be on there, but definitely use that code block to do that. Let's see here. So how does it work if a client wants to book another session? So in that case, a couple different things can happen. You could go through and you could send them the lead capture and have them, fill out another lead capture, and then it would create that project and the process would start. You could do it that way. You could fill something out internally if you wanted to. So maybe you go in and fill out a lead capture. The other thing that you can do is on the projects page, and I didn't talk about this originally, but it is possible. You could go to new project and click on that piece there, and you can go in and kind of build your project from scratch here and just select from your client list. And then you can choose them as the client or create a new one, but you can choose them as the client that's going to be associated with that project. You're not able to start workflows from this modal here, but you could potentially just create that project first and then go inside the project, add the workflow, and it would start running for you. So just assign the same client to the new project in that case. Awesome. Heather says, my media kit is in Google Slides. Does Dubsado integrate with sending people Google Slides? There is a way to do that. How you can do that is in the projects area. Let's click into a project. And if you're using the client portal, this also works as well. But underneath forms here, if we click this to add a new form, this is going to show you all the form templates that you have first. But if you keep scrolling down through here, we have what's called create a one-time link in Dubsado. And if you click into that, what you can do is you can send a client an external URL link for them to click into. If you want to type in the URL and title it, maybe it's Google Slides or however you want to title it, you can either put this link in the portal so that they can always have access to it, or you can go in and just send it to them via email and they can access it and it'll be a part of that project. So create a one-time link is the best way to send someone like anything that's external, like Google Drive, Dropbox, Pinterest boards, all that good stuff is the create a one-time link. Let's do one more question here because I know we're over time. And if you do have questions, like I said, definitely email us at hello@dubsado.com and we can help you out here. Let's see here. Are contracts modular or all in one? I'm not quite sure what that means, all in one, as far as what comes in with that all in one. Let's see here. And if we don't invoice through QuickBooks, how to bring our invoices in from another platform? So with that, what you would need to do is if you want the actual invoice in Dubsado, you would basically just recreate that invoice in Dubsado. And then what we have here is, let's go to this invoice. Let's say that we've recreated the invoice now and we want to balance it appropriately. What you can do is click the apply button on an invoice and say apply payment. And you can balance out the invoice based off of when they paid, how much, and what method, and that would balance it out appropriately. If you're not necessarily wanting to just use the invoice system in Dubsado to balance it out as far as the books are concerned, you could just take that invoice as a PDF and you can just upload. If we scroll through the forms, you can upload a new PDF as a form and just have the invoice just a part of the project. So that's if you don't really want to use the invoicing system. But if you do, you would just need to go in and create the invoice and recreate it and then just balance it out appropriately. So awesome, guys. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and jump off of here because we are a little bit over time. If you do have questions, send those to hello@dubsado.com. We can answer those questions. We have an amazing chat team who can chat through any questions that you have. Again, you can book calls with us. So if you want to talk more about like process and strategy and how does my business process fit into Dubsado, you can definitely book a call with us there. If you go to dubsado.com/help, You can either book an account solutions call with me and my team. You could book a demo. Maybe if you want a walk through the system that's more tailored towards your business, you could book a demo with us. So a lot of different ways to get in touch with us, but hopefully this was very informative for you guys. I hope this helps you kind of get an understanding of from front to back. This is kind of the way that Dubsado educates on the best way to streamline your process and get it all into Dubsado. So we will be sending out a copy of this. So I know it was a ton of information. It's kind of a lot, but we will be sending you out a copy of this webinar. Go back, rewatch it. We'll put this on our YouTube channel so you can share it with other people. But if you know of anybody who's just trying to figure out where should I start with Dubsado, anywhere you're at in your journey, you can kind of pick up on that outline and kind of walk through the necessary steps. Maybe you've missed something and you might say, why are workflows so overwhelming? Well, let me go back and see what I've missed here. And that's going to kind of help you get caught up. And then you can continue from that point. So awesome, guys. Well, have a amazing Memorial Day weekend. We won't be in the office on Monday, so we have a 3-day weekend. So we're super pumped. But hopefully you guys have a great weekend as well. Again, if you need us, we're here for you. And hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Take care, guys.